Good day, everybody. I know it's been a little while since I've had a video. Had a lot going on with high school sports and college sports, and I recently completed flag football state championships, the Classical Academy winning in 4A, Mountain Vista in 5A in Colorado. But I'm back here to take a look back at a very interesting year, the year 2000. When the year began, there were thoughts all computers would shut off, and all the power would go off, and even some thought the Earth would completely explode. And then nothing ever happened. Life went on like usual, to my relief and to the dismay of others who love violence. And we saw in sports, those of us who were around at the time, that anything can happen. Such as this guy, Kurt Warner, going from being a years-long backup quarterback, played in the Arena League, and I think played in NFL Europe too. Went from backup and playing in the minor leagues, if you will, to being a Super Bowl champion, leading the St. Louis Rams to a 23-16 win over the Tennessee Titans in the Super Bowl. Mike Jones' tackle on Titans receiver Kevin Dyson preserving the win for the Rams. I thought that was pretty cool. I know others didn't really agree. Warner wasn't flashy, didn't get in fights, that kind of thing. But I thought that was a cool moment. And then even in baseball that year, where there's always been a big gulf between the haves and the have-nots, and tough for low-market teams to win. And yet, in 2000, this guy, Magglio Ordonez, led the Chicago White Sox to the AL Central title, leading as that ended a 5-year run for Cleveland in that division. And then in the American League, nobody expected much out of Seattle. I know this is Ken Griffey Jr., who was traded in February. I'll get to that a little more in a moment, but Seattle, without Griffey, not expected to do much, won the American League wild card. And the small budget of the Oakland A's, led in part by that guy Ben Grieve, also Jason Giambi, Mark Mulder, Tim Hudson, and others, Barry Zito, won the American League West, their first division title in 8 years at the time. A hot run in September pushed Oakland to the top. And Seattle won the American League's only wild card on the last day of the season, beating out Cleveland. So for the first time since '93, Cleveland was absent from the playoffs. But the more things change, the more things seem to stay the same, as Derek Jeter and the New York Yankees won the American League East. The best pitcher in baseball, Pedro Martinez, couldn't put the Red Sox over the top. The Toronto Blue Jays, despite having one of the best players in baseball, Carlos Delgado, couldn't get past the Yankees either. And now the playoffs won in the American League, I'll get into in a little bit. But in the National League, again, learning about how anything can happen, the Arizona Diamondbacks traded for Curt Schilling to go with Randy Johnson at the trade deadline in 2000. Looked like Arizona would run away with the National League West and go to the World Series. Instead, they faded down the stretch. And these guys, the San Francisco Giants, with Barry Bonds, who I admit isn't my favorite player, but Giants rolled to the National League West that year when they weren't expected to. And then I mentioned Ken Griffey Jr. being traded to the Reds after Cincinnati won 96 games in 1999, but barely missed the playoffs despite that. When they acquired Ken Griffey Jr., most believed that'd push Cincinnati to the NL Central title and into the playoffs. Nope. An overworked bullpen from the previous year and not having a ton of starting pitching caught up with the Reds. And Jim Edmonds and the St. Louis Cardinals won the NL Central, their first playoff appearance since 1996. Now, some things stayed the same there, too. Chipper Jones and the Atlanta Braves won their 9th straight division title. And Mike Piazza and the New York Mets were wildcard winners for the second year in a row. Now in the National League, after St. Louis blew out Atlanta in the Division Series, the Mets needed just 4 games to beat the Giants in the Division Series. And then the Mets blew out the Cards in just 5 games to make it to the World Series. And while Seattle was sweeping the White Sox in the Division Series, the Yankees needed the full 5 to beat Oakland, but they did it. Even having to go on the road for 3 games in that series, but the Yankees' experience prevailed, and it would prevail again in a 6-game series over the Mariners, giving the Yankees their 4th American League pennant in 5 years. And in the World Series, the Yankees made it their 4th World Series title in 5 years, and a three-peat, defeating the Mets in 5 games in a series probably most remembered for Roger Clemens throwing his bat at Mike Piazza in Game 2. But it was the Yankees, even though every game was decided by 2 runs or less, but the Yankees got it done. And at least as of this video, the last Major League Baseball team to repeat, let alone three-peat, as World Series champions. But most of my peers didn't really care that much. They thought baseball was too slow, too non-violent. They thought it was really easy to hit. And at least some of the country seemed to agree. Yankees-Mets World Series, despite 2 New York teams being in it, was to that point in time the lowest-rated TV World Series of all time. Signs of change in the year 2000 were to come. The Milwaukee Brewers played their last game at County Stadium, leaving for the more luxurious Miller Park. And the same thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Pittsburgh Pirates. They ended their time at Three Rivers Stadium, moving to more modern, more luxurious stadiums. And these are the Denver Broncos playing the Tampa Bay Bucks in a game at Old Mile High Stadium in 1996. Broncos played their last game at the Old Mile High in 2000, as they'd move on to a more modern stadium, and are, of course, looking at moving into an even more modern, more luxurious stadium yet in a few years. Joy of new stadiums. I know sometimes they may be necessary, but oftentimes I think that's done out of greed. Now I go to my personal life back in 2000. Here's a picture of me back then, right before I was about to get to my junior year, and not the best photo of me, mouth wide open. That got me some flack from my parents and from my peers. Understandably so, but anyway, 2000's when my announcing career began. I got to do a faculty basketball game with a teacher in March of that year. Little shaky, but fun nonetheless. Coach Jeff Legault took a chance on me a little over a month later, April 27th, 2000, doing a baseball tournament. I did the PA announcing a little differently from others, mentioning what just happened, and most like what they heard, and career began. Also made a bunch of friends in 2000. Everything was going well, and then the football team at Dakota Ridge, who moved up to 5A after what was at best a bittersweet 99 season, their last year in 4A, in which they went 8-2 but finished 3rd in league and missed the playoffs. A homecoming loss to my future number 2 school in Golden sealed their fate for all intents and purposes. But in the year 2000, it would be a different story. Dakota would finish 7-3. Here's the team after stunning Columbine, the defending state champs at the time, 13-9 in a classic defensive struggle. And Dakota went on to finish 7-3, made the playoffs. And Dakota made it clear to the quarterfinals after a big win over South in the first round, Denver South, and had a lead on Mullen at halftime before Mullen eventually took over. I would eventually... Now, while it'd be a few years before I get to announce basketball, or before I get to announce football, rather, I did announce basketball at the end of 2000. Here's some photos of the girls' basketball team, as they would have an okay season, make the playoffs, got to host a game in the tournament, though I didn't get to announce that game. But I still get to announce basketball, and then boys basketball, I get to announce them as well. And that began late in the year 2000. 2000, again, very interesting year. I made multiple friends. Fine year in sports. Announcing career began. 2000 was a terrific year. But like an old Raul Donner song says, you don't know what you've got until you lose it. And that Raul Donner song from 1961, by the way. But it would ring true for me decades later, and still rings true for me today, as in 2001, life took a turn. Relationships didn't work out, and multiple tragedies took place. The September 11th terrorist attacks, my cousin ending his own life. I showed you a bunch of starting lineups as visual aids. That company went out of business in 2001. Favorite radio station, which included the Boogeyman, changed formats. To paraphrase Bob Dylan, the times, they were a-changing. And while I admit I remember the rough times more than the good times, I'll still always have fond memories of the year 2000 for many different reasons. And 2000, 25 years ago. Hard to believe, but it's been that long. I thought I'd share some memories of that year with you today. Thank you for watching. I know this took a while. I'll talk to you soon. In the meantime, have a good day, everyone.